slow growth in OECD countries, slow trade growth has its impact on developing countries, and that worsens their economic prospects. In addition, what you are also seeing is that we have major crises around the world, from Ukraine to Gaza, and the world is less concentrated on developing countries. So where the World Bank is, we would like to really focus on that, because this is where also our commitment is, but where we also see that the international community should again re-energize and concentrate to support developing countries, particularly the lowest developing countries.
How much meaningful reform are the Washington institutions prepared to take in order to make the leading developing countries, and of that of course I mean China and others as well, make them feel fully enfranchised?
I think whatever it takes. The World Bank has been
elected. The largest stakeholders feel whatever it takes.
I think we will need to do as an institution, and we have done it over time. We have been in existence basically since 1946. The negotiation of Bretton Woods were in 44, 80 years. We are a learning institution, and we have to adjust with the times. There are new challenges. This is not only the poverty agenda, but also the climate agenda, and we need to vastly participate in these global challenges, and we have been stepping up, but today we don't step alone. We need to do that in concert with other multilateral partners. That can be the IMF, other multilateral development banks, the UN system, but also the bilaterals. And the challenge is how we all together step up, because the challenges are enormous.
How far apart, and this isn't necessarily one of those traditional trans-Pacific routes that we talk about between the US and China, but how far apart are they in terms of what the Chinese want for reform of the Washington institutions post-Bretton Woods, and what the US and Europe are prepared to offer?
Well, I think that actually over time we have always found solutions. I think that what you also need to see is that actually the World Bank, in terms of voice reform, mainly representation, it's the organization that has been the most dynamic in the multilateral system. Keep in mind that the two largest shareholders in the World Bank gave up almost 60% of their voting shares over time, and so there is no other multilateral institution that are willing to do it. What is at stake is that we need to stay committed, we need to stay focused on the countries, what we need to do, we need to stay focused on particularly on climate change, we need to deliver on that, we can deliver that, we need more cooperation on this, and I think we can deliver.
How far apart are you from leaders over at the IMF on the reform to special drawing rights?
We are not dealing with the special drawing rights. We have made proposals. We have been interested in that. There are, of course, a lot of very technical issues. What is at stake is we will engage wherever it can, so that we can actually increase our joint firepower for developing countries. That's the most important thing.
I want to pick up on your point on delivering around climate change goals, and I want to ask you whether you think China is help or hindrance at this point, and through the lens that we've just heard from Janet Yellen about the overcapacity in these new areas of the economy, particularly around green technology, that we're now seeing that the Chinese outcompete anyone. We're hearing with AI and the reconfiguration of supply chains, a lot of these frontier developing countries should have now skin in the game. They should be able to create new industries because of that technical know-how that will close the gap thanks to AI. It's hard to see any of this coming to pass that would change the fortunes of these countries if China is going to continue to produce technology at a cheap cost like it's doing now.
Yeah, there are these issues, but we should also not underestimate what's happening in Vietnam or in India itself. There are major developments going in. What I'm looking at is that China has been an extremely supportive participant in the World Bank for climate change, and particularly renewables. We have more than doubled our climate change engagement. We will need to step up in concert with others. We are delivering what we have been saying. We are next year targeting that 45% of our commitments are going to climate. Just this is up from 40%. So I think we are aggressively working on it. What the point in climate change is, everybody has to do more, because what we are seeing is that the 1.5 degree is difficult to keep if we don't step up our joint investment. And that is from China to OECD countries. It are also the multilaterals that do have to do the maximum they can.
What's the sticking point with the countries that you're talking about? Is it lack of funding? Because from the conversations we have, there's no shortage of green funding. But for the countries that you're dealing with, is it lack of funding still, or is it execution, deploying those funds to have maximum impact?
Well, I think you have to differentiate. Some of the middle income countries have funding, but I think in the end, the challenges are enormous. Think of a coal exit, particularly in Asia. If you estimate it, you are looking towards $20 trillion over 20 years. These are massive amounts. What the World Bank is certainly concerned is that in a lot of developing countries, take Africa, that is disproportionately affected by climate change. Although they have only 3% of the emissions, they need help. They don't have enough funding, and there certainly we believe we need to step up. We have now started our latest round for our fund for the poorest countries. That was last time 93 billion. We want to make it the most ambitious round this time around. So we need international solidarity and generosity to make that happen, and there climate change investment will be very prominent.